What is something that is actually more traumatizing than people realize? Concussion. Got my first at age 60. My memory was really good before, nearly photographic good. Now, I forget the names of people, objects, and almost anything. It's like part of my brain got locked up, and I don't have a key for it. The things you think would be easy to remember, like the names of close friends, the grocery list, or even how to do certain tasks, just slip away. Sometimes I go to a room and forget what I went there for. It's the small things that add up, like constantly living in a fog. TBI is harder to see, but just as damaging. I'm 8 years from a TBI sustained from a tree limb falling on me. It's hard because people can't see the issues. But I struggle so much neurologically, functionally, mentally. I've lost a lot of beautiful memories, and now it's hard to remember simple things, like conversations or names of old friends. My whole support system disappeared, and I've lost almost all close family and struggled to keep a partner. It's hard to convey that things might seem normal from the outside, but mentally it's just different. I struggle to find work that fits my abilities now, and every day feels like a huge effort just to get through. You know you're as good as you're going to get in terms of recovery, and it's a very bleak reality to accept. Head injuries are more serious than they appear on TV. Head injuries need to be higher up. TV makes it look like getting knocked out is no big deal, but it really is. We see characters bouncing back like nothing happened, but even the mildest concussion can change your personality and your cognitive abilities. Ever felt the weight of doing the right thing, but facing the world alone because of it? Whistleblowing isn't just a single act. It's a journey that can change who you are forever. Have you ever had to stand up against the odds, or know someone who did? Let's talk about those moments that reveal our true strength, and sometimes cost us dearly. Drop your story, share your thoughts, or just let us know if this resonates with you. The lasting effects of a severe concussion. I got into a car accident that gave me a really bad concussion. I went to a university-run physical therapy center, and they actually had a top neurologist who was making steps to show the world that a concussion is not simply a concussion and 7 days in the dark. Turns out, you need to exercise the brain just like any other muscle after an injury. For memory, it's memory games until your brain is tired and then give it a break. Similar concept for reading. I couldn't read a page out of a book for a year after the accident. Not because I couldn't read, but because my brain literally couldn't focus on the story to keep it coherent. The frustrating invisibility of brain injuries. I was in an accident. A semi merged into me and whipped me around. I wasn't concussed, but since that day, I've had major issues with forgetting words, even if I'm looking right at what I'm trying to describe. I can feel the word, but it's like my brain refuses to connect the dots. The worst part is, everyone treats it like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. Getting older sucks. But it's not the same. It's so irritating trying to make people understand that something feels broken. CTE can happen to anyone, not just athletes. People always associate CTE with professional football players, but my brother had it despite never doing anything past local men's league hockey. He was stage 2 when he died at 40. At that point, your frontal lobe has enough lesions that you're not capable of thinking through your decisions or impulses. He became a different person, and in his moments of lucidity, he knew something was wrong with his brain. All of that, just from playing hockey, some car accidents, and whatever teenage shenanigans he got up to. Being betrayed by someone you considered trustworthy, especially someone like your own mother on many occasions. The one person who should have your back, who's supposed to be your ultimate safe place, turning on you. That betrayal stings in a way that feels like it never heals. You spend a lifetime wondering if you'll ever feel safe confiding in anyone again, or if everyone's love comes with a hidden agenda. Trust shattered by those closest to you. My husband, and my best friend. I get panic attacks when I see a car that looks even remotely like his now. My head is constantly on a swivel in public, dreading that I'll accidentally run into one of them. If I know I have to see them later in the day, the anxiety takes over. It's especially awful when our daughter is with him, and I can't help but feel like they both broke me. I'm not diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure they left me with some form of PTSD. Working for a shitty boss, supervisor, it plays on your brain. 2 months ago, I finally managed to get out from under my awful boss. She's known for being demeaning, snapping at people with this nasty, condescending tone. I managed to join my old manager's team, a kind woman who had been my mentor and first hired me. It felt like I'd finally found a place I could work without feeling dread every morning. Then, yesterday, they announced my former boss was getting a promotion and would be taking over my new team. So now I'm back under her reign. It feels like I can't escape. The toll of a toxic workplace. Bro, I'd quit. Don't waste any more of your life under someone like that. Start looking for a new job, seriously. Your mental health deserves better. And let them know why. And when you leave, don't go silently. Let them know she's driving away the good employees. Sometimes, people only understand when they see the numbers, like how high turnover can damage a team, especially when it's because of one toxic manager. Thing is, I was about to quit a month and a half ago. Our company had just been bought out, and the transition was slow at first, but then we got hacked, and everything changed overnight. Suddenly, I was in a brand new position, one way more stressful, with piles of extra work. I actually told my boss I was overwhelmed, and they hit me with, "Expect more work." A few weeks later, the nasty manager set up a meeting with me. I was ready to quit if it wasn't about helping me manage the load. Surprisingly, she offered me a promotion with a nice raise and a job more like my previous role, and I went back under my old manager. But now, after a reorganization, I'm back with her again, still with the raise and the easier job, but it's been a roller coaster, and my health, mentally and physically, has really taken a hit. Yes, I worked for a verbally abusive boss for 2.5 years. Leaving that job was one of the most liberating days of my life. The abuse was constant, yelling, belittling, everything under the sun. It was like a bad relationship where you know you're being manipulated, but the constant attacks make you doubt yourself. It took months to shake that feeling, like I was finally waking up from a bad dream. It felt like breaking free from an emotionally abusive relationship, and those scars take time to heal. I was the only person on a team of 12 who could handle our horrible boss. She was mentally unstable and couldn't handle the high-stress industry we're in. People would ask me all the time how I could keep working with her. I treated her like she had a mental handicap, and that helped me cope, but still, no one should have to work under such circumstances. In the end, distancing myself emotionally kept me sane, but it still wasn't enough. Toxic bosses drain you to the core, and it's just not worth it in the long run. Workplace bullying can be devastating. The bullying I endured at work left me deeply depressed, and I spent months feeling like I was spiraling. Even years later, it still affects me. You think it's just a job, but when it's constant, it starts to seep into every part of your life, making even small tasks feel heavy. For months, I was in survival mode, and looking back, it's shocking how bad it was. The scars don't just disappear, no matter how much time passes. I left my bad boss 4 years ago, and I still have nightmares about going back. It's been 4 years, and I still wake up in a cold sweat from nightmares where I've somehow ended up working for that boss again. I'm always filled with relief when I realize I'm safe in my current, far better job. The impact of working under that kind of leadership doesn't just vanish. It leaves lasting memories, like shadows that linger long after you've left. I worked at a coffee shop after burning out in special ed during COVID. I thought the coffee shop would be a mental reset, but the management there was so toxic, I ended up needing therapy for workplace anxiety. I had left my old job to escape burnout, only to find myself in an environment that was just as damaging in a completely different way. It's crazy how these situations can impact your mental health, and sometimes it takes years to recover. Trauma seems dramatic, but getting laid off really messed me up. Every day, waking up with this pit in your stomach, wondering what happened, and asking yourself, what went wrong? I still think about it even now, years later, at my current job. There's this constant shadow that doesn't fully go away, reminding me how quickly things can change. Reading through these comments is like a strange therapy. It's comforting to know others understand. It's amazing how much we all need that support. It took me about 5 years after getting laid off to stop panicking over surprise meetings. Every time a last-minute meeting popped up on my calendar, I would feel this intense anxiety. My mind would immediately go to worst-case scenarios, imagining all kinds of situations where I might be in trouble. 5 years later, I still feel a spike of worry whenever my boss unexpectedly reaches out. Those experiences don't just vanish, they stick around, quietly influencing you in ways you don't always realize. If I don't have time for a proper agenda, I always add, "Nothing's wrong, just need a quick chat." As someone who understands that feeling deeply, I now make sure to clarify when something isn't urgent or negative. I know how much that little note, "nothing's wrong," can ease someone's mind and prevent that sinking feeling. It's such a small thing, but it can mean the difference between a panicked day and one that's just business as usual. I've gone through it twice. The first time wasn't so bad, but the second time was different. The first layoff was manageable. I was married with no kids, and options for a new role came up quickly. But the second time was like a gut punch. I had a mortgage, 2 kids, and no idea what I was going to do. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like everything was collapsing, and there was this intense fear about providing for my family. Thankfully, it led to bigger opportunities, but I'll never forget that moment of pure panic. That fear lingers, even when things turn out okay. Emotional neglect. It leaves deep, invisible scars. Neglect isn't always visible to others, but it lingers. I grew up feeling as though I was constantly apologizing for existing. My mom left when I was young, and my dad remarried someone who didn't like kids. She was distant, dismissive, and never once made an effort to connect. I became an anxious person, apologetic even when I hadn't done anything wrong. Trying to break out of that pattern has been an uphill climb. This hits hard. My parents were emotionally unavailable. I recently had a therapy session where the realization just hit me. My parents' unavailability left a huge gap in my life. My mom never emotionally connected with me, and my dad was too passive to change anything. It's only now, in my 30s, that I fully grasp just how much it affected my self-worth. Therapy opened up a lot of pain, but it's helping me slowly heal. What always got to me was seeing how close my friends were with their moms. One of the toughest things was watching my friends' relationships with their moms. I'd be at their houses, and their moms would invite me to stay for dinner, treat me with warmth, something I never knew with my own family. At home, my mom would literally ignore my existence, and my stepdad would just leave me out. It took me years to understand that kindness from a parent wasn't just a movie cliché. It was something I could have had. I'm 40 and just now have a therapist I trust. I'm 40 years old, and it's only in the last few years that I've found a therapist I can trust. 3 years of her checking in, showing care, and bit by bit, I'm finally feeling seen. The emotional scars of not having anyone to turn to in my youth left me struggling for years. Studies are showing that it may have longer-lasting effects than physical violence. There's research coming out now that suggests the scars left by emotional neglect may actually run deeper than physical wounds. If anyone needs a solid resource, check out Heidi Priebe on YouTube. The book she recommends changed my perspective. And remember, it's never too late to understand and work through it. Emotional flashbacks aren't setbacks. They're signals to be gentle with yourself. The lasting effects of mental illness are often underestimated. Even after you make it out of the worst of a mental health struggle, the lingering effects can change you permanently. I think about the years I've lost to depression and anxiety. So many opportunities gone, moments missed. It's uplifting to know I'm not alone in this. It's bittersweet that this resonates with so many people. But here's a reminder. It's okay to grieve what you missed, but there's help and a community out there. If you've had suicidal ideation once, it's like it's always there. Even if you're miles away from that mental place, it lingers. I remember a poet saying, "I think a lot about killing myself. It's not a point on a map, but more of a glowing exit sign in a movie that hasn't been quite bad enough to leave." It stays with you, even when life feels manageable, as a kind of reflex, and it's hard to explain to those who haven't been there. Untreated mental health issues in childhood can leave lifelong effects. Growing up with social anxiety, I missed so many chances to connect with others and experience things that seem so natural to others. Looking back, I wish my parents had recognized what I was going through and taken me to therapy. Now, I'm learning those skills as an adult. I'm proud of the progress I've made, but there's a sense of grief over who I could have been if I'd gotten help sooner. ICU stays and ICU delirium are uniquely terrifying. I was intubated twice this year, and the delirium that came with it was like a waking nightmare. Processing reality became almost impossible, and I hallucinated my deceased boyfriend decomposing in front of me. It was horrifying. People don't talk enough about how disorienting and traumatizing an ICU stay can be. Your mind becomes a prison with no escape. Being screamed at, Growing up in a household where yelling and arguments were a daily occurrence has a lasting impact. Even today, if I see someone getting yelled at, my body goes rigid, and I feel trapped in that old fear. It's something I carry with me, and it flares up at the slightest raised voice. Reliving old arguments in new moments. My mom was great in many ways, but her way of handling stress was to blow up, yell, and say hurtful things she'd forget later. But I remember every word, every sting. Now, my boyfriend has his own loud moments. He doesn't yell at me, but when he's frustrated, like if his game isn't going well or he's bombarded with things, the tone can bring it all back. I'll tense up, sometimes even start crying. It's a cycle of embarrassment and pain that lingers like a bad memory. Friendship breakups. People think romantic breakups are the hardest, but friend breakups can be just as devastating, if not more. Those connections often go deeper, and they hurt in ways that feel so personal. I've had more heartbreak from losing close friends than from any romantic relationship. The emptiness left by a close friend. My best friend of 10 years vanished from my life about a year ago. We were so close, like family, and I'm left with these questions that gnaw at me. What went wrong? Was it something I did? She was a huge part of my world, and now she's just gone. Losing that closeness still hurts in ways I can't quite describe. Trust shattered by a friend. I had a friend who felt like my other half for years. We were both a bit quirky and bonded over the things that set us apart. One day, though, I noticed people at school whispering and laughing about things only she knew. Turns out, she'd been sharing my secrets all along, pretending to sympathize while gossiping behind my back. I'll never forget the day she accidentally messaged me instead of someone else, a message with everything she'd said about me. Since then, I keep even the smallest things close. No one really knows my secrets, not because they're big, but because I can't shake the feeling that they'll use them against me one day. Getting fired. Losing your job doesn't just impact your finances. It shatters your confidence, makes you question your own worth, and can even change how you approach every new job. Getting fired hurts in ways a lot of people don't understand. When it's your own mistake. Once, I had a job I loved, surrounded by friends, excelling in what I did. But a single careless mistake ended it all, and that sense of failure still haunts me. I keep thinking of how I should have known better, how I could have avoided it, losing connections you valued. It's worse when you know you can't just reconnect with people you worked closely with. The friendships don't just disappear, but suddenly there's this wall, a single missed shift derailing everything. Years ago, I finally got a big break in a field I'd wanted to work in for so long. I loved the job, even if it was just part-time. But after agreeing to a shift change offhandedly and forgetting, I ended up out of town with a friend, and everything came crashing down. My mistake shut down the whole place, and I was dismissed the next day. Since then, I've been almost obsessively careful with calendars and reminders. I still wake up from nightmares about losing that job, even though it was 7 years ago. Constant anxiety in every job after. I was fired once, and no matter how well I'm doing now, that fear of messing up lingers. Even when my boss praises me, I still worry I'm just one step away from losing it all. Being let go without a fight. Getting caught in a restructuring and seeing your boss make no effort to save you is devastating. They call you an asset to the team, and then watch as you're let go. It happened to me in August. Store shut down, only to reopen 2 weeks later. The toll on my self-worth was brutal. The fear of not being good enough. For many of us, the thought of not being good enough is a haunting fear. When that fear is confirmed, when you're actually let go, it shakes your entire sense of self. Being a whistleblower, reaching the point where you know you have to speak up, is a breaking moment in itself, when you realize that staying silent is no longer an option, despite knowing the risks. Following through and blowing the whistle is isolating and terrifying. You're putting your trust in systems and people who may not be there to protect you. The fear of retaliation, the loss of relationships, and the feeling of being labeled as the enemy all take their toll. And even after it's over, the impact lingers long after everyone else has moved on. The world expects you to return to normal, but the experience leaves a deep mark. It changes you. Trust becomes harder, and the weight of what you did and why never fully leaves you. I don't regret it, but I'm not who I used to be anymore. Edit Saturday morning, October 26th. I just woke up and I see this clearly struck a nerve with many, so I'm going to add details to help guide others as far as possible without compromising myself. In my country, whistleblowers are protected by law, so I knew doing it meant they couldn't come after me financially or fire me. That said, I also know how little the law protects you if the company decides to make your life hell at work for doing it. Hence, I did it anonymously and stayed anonymous. A friend who works in HR told me, "No one wants to hire a whistleblower, they are considered troublemakers, so tell no one about this, ever." Since I was whistleblowing on the CEO, I knew I couldn't use the proper channels, as per the company's whistleblower directive, so I reported the person directly to the board with HR and copy. This meant everyone at the top, owner, board, and CEO, was compromised, and they had to bring in external lawyers to investigate. This is not necessarily the case in other countries, so check this before you do it. I was high enough in the system that I not only heard how the CEO reacted to this happening, they were furious that someone did this and were on the hunt for the whistleblower, claiming the board supported them. They even made a top 5 inches list, openly talking to the management level about who was on it. I was also sat in the same office floor, so hearing doors slam, whispered conversations, hurried footsteps, and raised voices behind locked doors caused me a lot of tension. Trust no one. I sat around listening to colleagues speculating about who the whistleblower was, like it was some reality show, gleefully marinating in gossip instead of doing something themselves. The CEO had been causing havoc in the company many years before I joined, so for years, people had done nothing. When they finally had the opportunity, no one stepped up. In fact, I sat around listening to colleagues who were leaders, while their staff listened to how appalled they were and how much they hated what had been done. As a last note, I did end up leaving the company in the end, as I lost all respect for the company and my colleagues. While it was probably the worst time of my entire life, I want to underline that I do not regret it. Standing up for myself and doing what was right made me able to claim back the power and control I felt had been taken from me. That said, I probably won't stomach doing something like this again, and I've lost a little fight and faith in humanity because of it. Thank you for all your supportive comments, and if you need to talk, feel free to contact me privately. It massively helps to talk to someone who has been through it if you're thinking about doing it or are already in the middle of it.